that our fears are that the president is spearheading a disinformation campaign, and that is very unsettling. We hope that he'll stop that, because the courts speak for themselves, and even for us, we also speak for ourselves. Thank you.
Office in this land, which is something very unfortunate. No, not fight it in that form, but actually ensure that actually they read the ruling and disseminate it to also the other comrades to ensure they actually understand what they actually the court actually gave out.
Thank you.
Eric, maybe we are indicating to you that our fears are that the president is spearheading a disinformation campaign, and that is very unsettling. We hope that he'll stop that, because the courts speak for themselves, and even for us, we also speak for ourselves. Thank you.
It's a government which is unable to make any progressive policies to support the poor, especially in the realization of economic and social rights, from education to health to housing. So I think that is the whole pattern of the bigger governance crisis we are living around this regime, and that's why it is engaging in, because it's not able to deliver on most of those kind of obligations.
We are seated here as a Elimu Bora working group to issue a statement titled Defending Education Rights in Kenya's Funding Model. Contrary to the views expressed by President RUTO at Sagana Lodge during a media interview that the Court of Appeal validated the new university funding model as constitutional and lawful, and its government will proceed to fully implement the same, Elimu Bora Working Group wishes to inform the public that this was a misrepresentation of the court ruling. The Elimu Bora Working Group stands firm in our opposition to the new university funding model, urging all Kenyans to understand that the true nature of the Court of Appeal's interim orders. These orders merely established temporary conditions while allowing conditional implementation of the model pending final judgment of the appeal. The conditions for the stay of execution pending the appeal were: the government was ordered to create and publicize an appeals mechanism for aggrieved students within 14 days. The conditions mandate full transparency about the contingent nature of current funding arrangements. The order specifically requires the Higher Education's Loan Board and trustees of the Education's Fund to inform those who apply and receive funding that the funding is under court challenge, and the funding model may change in future depending on the outcome of the appeal. The intended appellants were granted 14 days to file these appeals. The Court of Appeal has not overturned Justice Chacha Mwita's High Court judgment that declared this funding model unconstitutional, despite widespread misinformation suggesting otherwise. This stay of execution comes with specific conditions that must be strictly followed by government agencies, including the Higher Education Loans Board and the Universities Fund, Kenya. We condemn in the strongest terms the President's misleading statements claiming victory for the state's push to implement this harmful funding model, which directly contradict the court's actual ruling. Such pronouncements from the highest office not only misrepresent facts, but dangerously encroach upon judicial independence at a critical moment for Kenya's education system. The President must respect the separation of powers and refrain from interfering with ongoing judicial processes that will determine the future of higher education access. The court document clearly states that the appeals will be listed for priority hearing in the second term of this year, with no final decision yet rendered on the constitutionality of the funding for the variable scholarship loan funding model, otherwise called the new university funding model. We must all correctly interpret the court's order as a temporary compromise arrangement, not a validation of this exclusionary funding scheme.
Maybe I'll begin by reiterating the fact that whatever we're dealing with at the Court of Appeal currently is a ruling, not a judgment. I think it's important to reiterate that. A ruling is a temporary order. It does not conclude the case, so to speak. So then it's wrong in so many ways for the president to come out in public and say that there's a judgment at the Court of Appeal. What you're dealing with is a ruling, and it's a conditional ruling. The ball is in the government's court to abide by the conditions that were stated in the ruling. So it's basically just supposed to throw some ice on the tension that is between us and the state at the Court of Appeal. Otherwise, you're going back to court, and going by the court's directive, we should be over and done with this matter in the next quarter. So that's 2 to 3 months. So we're looking at July and October. We wouldn't be going back to court if this matter had been concluded. So we'll continue pommeling that out so that we continue getting the right picture of things. So very quickly on the second part, the university funding model, stripped of government propaganda, represents nothing less than a dramatic increase in higher education costs that places university degrees beyond reach of many deserving students. This model fundamentally threatens the constitutional right to accessible education and reverses decades of progress towards education equality in Kenya. The High Court correctly recognized these dangers when Justice Mwita declared the funding model unconstitutional on the 20th of December 2024, a judgment we wholeheartedly support and will continue to defend through all available channels. We remind all Kenyans that this model was implemented without proper public participation and fails to address the needs of Kenyans from disadvantaged backgrounds. The court's requirement for an appeals mechanism acknowledges the inherent flaws in the current categorization system. Kenyan students must remain vigilant against the government's persistent attempts to implement this exclusionary model despite ongoing legal challenges. All students should understand that under the Court of Appeals order, any funding received through this model is explicitly conditional and subject to change based on the final court determination. We urge students to document any challenges they face under this system and prepare to utilize the mandated appeals mechanism when it becomes available within the next 1 week. The court's order explicitly requires the Higher Education Loans Board and the Kenya University Fund to inform all students that the funding model may change in the future depending on the outcome of the appeal pending at the court. This transparency requirement reflects the tentative nature of the current arrangement. As per the directive of the court, we expect full compliance by the parties concerned, and we trust that the court will enable us to undertake close monitoring of compliance with the cost conditions, particularly the establishment of the appeals mechanism within the mandated 14-day time frame and the required transparency with students about the conditional nature of the funding.
Call upon all progressive voices in Kenya's education sector, that is, students, parents, teachers, academics, civil society organizations, and concerned citizens, to join in this crucial struggle for education justice. The future of Kenya's next generation depends on our collective ability to resist policies that condemnify education and resist opportunity based on economic status. Together, we can ensure that the constitutional promises of accessible education remains a reality for all Kenyans, regardless of the background or financial circumstances. The Court of Appeal will continue hearing this matter in the second term of this year as stipulated in the order. And until then, we must remain engaged, informed, and prepared to defend our education rights. We urge all stakeholders to read the actual Court of Appeal dated March 26, 2025, rather than rely on misleading statements from various quarters attempting to misrepresent the current legal status of this deeply flawed funding model. Thank you.
Dhuluma webaki nyuma, sitasonga na haki. Dhuluma webaki nyuma, sitasonga na haki. Pamoja, 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 pamoja twashinda. Pamoja, 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 pamoja twashinda. Hela yo. Asanteni sana.